Coming up on Network Africa. Zimbabwe Parliament passes bill extending President Mnangagwa's current term to 2030. Nigerian forces search for gunmen who attacked the country's international airport, killing 35 people. Plus, Ghanaian President John Mahama announces global panel's reparatory justice conference in Accra. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. President Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe might be staying in office for a little while longer, until 2030, all thanks to a decision by members of the country's parliament. The bill, tabled by the Justice Minister at the start of June before lawmakers, received overwhelming support, with 1,218 lawmakers voting in favor. The threshold needed for the text to pass was 187. It will now go to the Senate, where it's equally expected to pass and with little or no resistance. The proposal defers elections due in 2028 by 2 years, effectively extending the president's term to 2030. It also lengthens the terms of the president, members of parliament, councillors and mayors from 5 to 7 years. Security operatives in Niger Republic are looking for the attackers of the country's international airport in recent days, killing 11 soldiers and 2 civilians. The group linked to Al-Qaeda claims the airport attack that also left 22 of them killed in the process in a raid at the Diori Hamani International Airport in Niamey. Residents say they had just finished their morning prayers when explosions and gunshot sounds rang out from Diori Hamani International Airport. Niger's defense ministry said the fatalities comprised 22 assailants, 11 soldiers and 2 civilians. Niger has been fighting an Islamist insurgency for a decade, and in January, an organization linked to the Islamic State group claimed responsibility for an attack on the same airport. Thursday's violence settled by mid-morning, and security forces have since launched a manhunt for any remaining attacker. Meanwhile, the Nigerian military authorities have accused France of backing the attackers behind the assault on the airport, claiming armed mercenaries funded by the French president attempted to storm the facility on Thursday. This was contained in a statement broadcast on state television. It says some of the attackers were equipped with explosive belts and arrived using civilian transport vehicles, including taxis, before being stopped by security forces. The Ministry of Defense confirmed the number of people killed, including those they had neutralized, at 35. He later gave assurances that the Diori Hamani International Airport was now fully secured. France is yet to respond to the accusations. Let's bring in African Liberty contributor Agbe Oboromo. He joins us from Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right, so this is the second major attack on the airport in Niamey, and by gunmen said to be terrorists linked to, Al-Qaeda. And, of course, the Islamic State as well. Is there a reason why the airport is a major target for these attackers?
Absolutely. I think it's a matter of capacity and perception. To put a question on the capacity of the leadership of the country to be able to protect lives and properties, and what else, how else can this be done than to attack very sensitive and symbolic government assets like the airport, which is situated in an environment where you have a military base. So it's to sell a perception that the government of the day is not exactly in charge, and that they are in charge. I'm talking the insurgent groups now, that they are in charge. And we see a situation, call it some sort of escalation theory playing out, where, of course, in January 29th, this same year, we saw the ISIS-affiliated group also attack the same airport. And now we are seeing the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group attacking the same airport. So it's a battle for supremacy as to which group is actually calling the shots in Niger at this very point in time.
And, I see how quickly authorities responded to bring the, things under control at the airport. Could you speak to the reality of Niger Republic security challenges despite having a military leader?
Absolutely. Now, let's take our minds back to 2023 when the junta came on board. The government declared that the reason why they are wresting power, seizing power from the civilian government is because of issues like this, because of insecurity in the country, and they are coming to salvage the situation and give the people some sort of respite from these insurgent groups. But we are seeing a different situation right now in Niger Republic, and not just in Niger Republic, as a matter of fact, the AES states altogether. So it's just a pointer to the fact that the government of the day has so much to do in terms of being proactive rather than being reactionary. Because what we see now are they are trying to react, and it's not really showing strength. As a matter of fact, the optics are not good. We need the government to be able to prevent these things from even happening in the first place. There were casualties in the most recent attack on Thursday. We had about 11 military personnel killed, 2 civilians, and even if you have a higher score on the other side, but all of this should be avoided. So the government right now needs all the alliances possible. It needs to strengthen its intelligence and see how it can build more community trust. Because if you have people reporting, some sort of eyewitness reports per time, it's going to save the situation. So intelligence is very important. I mean, the AES states can do more with sharing intelligence among themselves and also see how they can strengthen the buffer, because attacking the capital of a country does not look good at all.
Right. And, there's still some secrecy surrounding this approach by the authorities. Very little is said except that the attack was quashed. Do you suppose the terrorists are trying to wrestle power from the military junta? And, how dangerous would that be for Niger and for the region should this happen?
To wrest power from the junta, government of the day, would not be an easy peasy thing to do, because, of course, most recently we saw the United States declare Niger Republic as a partner once again after the junta came on board in 2023 and asked the US and France to exit, and this one was evacuated. But in recent history, just about 2 weeks ago, we saw about 9 containers land in Niamey, and they had first aid materials, they had, of course, uniforms and all of that for the Nigerian military. So to a very large extent, we cannot exactly say that the insurgent groups will be able to seize power or take over governance in Niger Republic. But the attempts to destroy lives and properties is something that the government must, at this very point in time, stop and prevent, because they are currently losing trust from their peoples. And once a government loses trust, it affects everything. It becomes a downward spiral. So I do not see a situation where the insurgent groups can be able to seize power from the government of the day. It's going to be a very difficult one to
Right,
do.
right. Thanks again, Agweye. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has issued a stark warning that an imminent offensive risks fresh commission of serious international crimes and deepens the catastrophic impacts on an already beleaguered civilian population. He was given the warning in a recorded video from the UN in which he said, "We cannot allow the repeat of the preventable atrocities." He also spoke about the effects that the use of drones is having on civilians and civilian infrastructure in Kordofan. The High Commissioner has urged both parties to the conflict to ensure the safe movement of civilians who have been repeatedly forced to flee violence and are in search of basic services. Well, the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has clarified why recently signed a transfer of sentenced persons agreement with the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. According to the minister, Bianca Odumego Ojukwu, this was in line with the citizen diplomacy of the renewed hope administration of President Bola Tinubu, which places priority on Nigerians in diaspora. She says that efforts are ongoing to intervene in cases of other Nigerians imperiled in parts of the world. Mrs. Odumego Ojukwu dismissed the purported list circulating in various media platforms as the names and numbers of Nigerian inmates in Ethiopian prisons as fake, insisting that Nigeria did not have 136 inmates in that country. The minister also describes some crimes attributed to them as wild tangent. Nigeria's ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire has formally presented his letters of credence to President Alassane Ouattara during a ceremony held at the Presidential Palace in Abidjan on June 18, 2026. Accompanied by his wife, Lady Chidinma Wobiala, the presentation of the letters of credence marks the official commencement of the ambassador's diplomatic assignments in Cote d'Ivoire following his appointment by President Bola Tinubu. Ambassador Wobiala conveyed President Tinubu's warmest wishes to the president and the people of Cote d'Ivoire and reaffirmed Nigeria's commitment to further strengthen the long-standing bonds of friendship and cooperation between the two countries. President Ouattara welcomed the ambassador and reiterated the importance of the cordial relations existing between the two countries. Meanwhile, the African Centers for Disease Control says the Ebola epidemic has claimed more than 200 lives in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a little over a month after it was declared. It says 202 people had died from the virus from 875 confirmed cases, given a mortality rate of 23%. The Red Cross warned this week that the outbreak in DRC, declared on May 15, has yet to peak and could take a year to contain. The response to the epidemic, the 17th to hit the vast Central African country, faces towering challenges. No approved vaccines or treatments exist for the Bundibugyo strain of the virus responsible for the current outbreak. Well, as DR Congo battles a deadly Ebola outbreak, a young innovator has built touch-free hand-washing stations to help people clean their hands without spreading infection. His name is Glody Luwana Dongwele, and he recently demonstrated the system. The unit is operated by foot pedals dispensing soap and water without users touching a tap. Workers are also seen welding and assembling the stations in a local workshop. Dr. Fabrice Bessenye, medical director of Kaseyoro Hospital, said that hand hygiene remains one of the simplest ways to stop infectious diseases from spreading. DR Congo declared the outbreak on May 15 after a laboratory test confirmed a Bundibugyo virus disease. Uganda confirmed an imported case from DR Congo the same day. That's according to the World Health organization. And Guinean President John Mahama is currently hosting a conference to advance the continent's push for reparatory justice after the adoption of the landmark United Nations resolution declaring the trafficking of enslaved Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. On Thursday, he announced the establishment of 3 global panels which will serve as the pillars of the next phase of the international effort. Although the historic vote at the UN in March declared the transatlantic slave trade the gravest crime against humanity, the UN session also split into the global south and their allies and the West in a very stark way, particularly over reparations and what they would look like. 123 countries backed it, including all African nations present and BRICS allies like Russia, China, Brazil, India, and many more. 3 countries, the US, Israel, and Argentina, voted against, and 52 abstained. Notable abstentions included the UK, Ukraine, and all 27 European Union nations, who cited varying concerns over the wording and the extent of any reparation. And moving on, the president at the conference of the Namibian president, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, who said Africa's demand for reparatory justice over slavery and colonialism is driven by dignity and not bitterness. She said many families are still searching for ancestors torn from their homelands, calling their return a matter of humanity, dignity, and closure.
It is the beginning of a journey towards truth, acknowledgement, healing, and justice for millions of Africans and people of African descent whose lives were forever changed by slavery, colonialism, and historical injustice. We speak about those matters. When we speak about those matters, we are speaking about real people. Mothers and fathers spearheaded from taken away from their children, their families were torn apart, uprooted from their communities, and find themselves in a situation that they could not imagine. The effect of those injustices did not disappear when slavery ended or colonial flags were lowered. They continue to shape lives today through inequality, poverty, lost opportunities, and at times how people see themselves and their places in the world. It must, however, be underscored that for more than a century now, families have been searching for their ancestors. There's something profoundly painful about knowing that those who suffered such cruelty were denied even the dignity of resting in the soil of their homeland.
And as for the president of Liberia, Joseph Boakai, the world needs to confront uncomfortable truths. He invited partners across the world to share in Africa's anguish and recognize enduring consequences of the historic injustice.
Steps following this historic resolution, Liberia offers its experience as evidence of justice, healing, and reconciliation are inseparable from the sustainable development and lasting peace. With this resolution not adopted, the question before us is simple. What must we do next? Allow me, therefore, to propose 5 priorities for implementation. First, we must develop a common African position and implementation framework in collaboration with the CLARICON and diaspora organizations, supported by a coordinated roadmap with clear priorities, responsibilities, and timeliness. Second, working with the United Nations, we should establish an African Union, United Nations Expert Commission to design a global reparatory justice mechanism. Third, we must confront misinformation and erase through truth, education, and research by strengthening the teaching of African history.
Away from a conference on reparatory justice, AFC M23 group leader Corneille Nangaa has accused Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi of making a declaration of war following remarks about retaking territories held by the movement. During a press conference in Goma on Thursday, he argued that the comments amounted to an end to the Doha peace process. Ms. Nangaa also accused the government of ethnic cleansing and ongoing hostilities in South Kivu. Deputy Coordinator Bertrand Bisimwa questioned the effectiveness of previous ceasefire arrangements, arguing that agreements reached during negotiations had never been implemented. And as we close, here's our fun fact about Africa. Did you know that Niger Republic was once part of several West African empires, including the Kanem Borno, Mali, and Songhai empires, and all were involved in the trading of gold, salt, and slaves? Niger was also colonized by France in 1890, and in 1958 became an autonomous republic of French community before achieving full independence in 1960. Following independence, it suffered from a series of coups and political instability, and more recently from repeated droughts, insurgency, and widespread poverty. Niger is partly covered by the world's largest hot desert, the Sahara Desert. Well, if you didn't, now you know. That's our program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.